You're watching Saturday Anime on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Hey now, this is Reverend Paul, and this is studiochojin Raw, and once again, I am joined by Reverend Jiim. Jiim, how you doing?
Hi, I'm okay. How are you?
I'm doing well. Today, we are going to talk about the Chainsaw Man movie, the Reze Arc.
The first ever Chainsaw Man movie. It's been about 2 years now since season 1 ended. I only just recently watched season 1 of Chainsaw Man. Thanks to you and your videos there, I decided just to go and give it a shot, and lo and behold, it was a fucking ride. Between some of the stuff that happens in season 1 and the stuff that happens in the movie, I'm convinced the creator of Chainsaw Man, Tatsuki Fujimoto, I'm convinced that the man might be insane.
He's either insane or he's extremely sadistic.
I think it could be both too. The way he uses his art, like just the language of the comic page, is spectacular. He has a better eye for composition in terms of page flow than I think a lot of artists, both in Japan and in America, can go and reach. It kind of gives me kind of like a Dave Gibbons vibe. This was animated by Studio Mappa, the same studio that did season 1, and I didn't think that they could go and exceed my expectations after everything they did for season 1. That season looked astoundingly good. The opening scene in the movie is done in black and white and looks like it's straight out of the manga.
Yeah, we saw it in 3D, and the opening shot is Denji's dream, where he dreams of Pochita telling him not to open the door. And that whole sequence in the beginning is in black and white. It looks so cool in 3D. I loved seeing a manga in 3D like that.
I was surprised at how well the 3D was integrated in that. The way they were able to play with depth and everything was actually really impressive for what I was figuring was going to end up just looking more distracting than anything else. Shout out to Tom, Will, Lewis, and Shauna who joined us. That was the first scene, and it floored all of us. Fujimoto's artwork is kind of sketchy. It's got a very loose kind of gestural quality to it. This refines it a little bit. It's not as sketchy, but it takes the same kind of shapes that he makes out of the ink for like certain expressions, things like that, and gives it that same looseness, but just a little bit more refinement to the line.
It's extremely striking visually. The anime looked very cool, but it did look very 3D at times. But I think this does improve upon the quality of the anime,
which I didn't even think was possible. They even found a way to go and somehow make that alleyway door look more frightening.
So the movie, it picks up after the last episode of Chainsaw Man, where we've killed all the zombies, that chick has been eaten by the big snake.
We kick Katana Man in the nuts over and over again.
Unfortunately, there's not a lot of power, but this movie does begin with a really cool music video, and we get nice little vignettes of the three main characters.
We join our three heroes there after the celebratory meal, after the raid that took out Katana Man and Snake Devil. They've all been pretty much just asleep at the dinner table on the floor. Denji wakes up and suddenly Power looks different. She's grown another set of horns. And when Power strikes him, Denji goes flying up into the ceiling. They realize something's up and immediately drag Power to Makima.
Yes, and because Power has drank too much blood, she has to get her blood drained, so she can't be Denji's partner. So Denji's partner for the movie is Beam, the shark fiend.
Beam might have made the movie for me. The fact that you just have this shark-headed fanboy of Chainsaw Man. Denji hits him and his reaction is, "Can I have another, please?" His enthusiasm is infectious. He's just there to help Lord Chainsaw. Denji doesn't really want to be partnered with anybody. He still kind of has his issues with Aki and his issues with Power. Clearly just wants to go it alone, but Makima insists because Beam actually spoke in full sentences to Makima for the first time ever and said that he wanted to work with Chainsaw Man.
He's basically like Denji's sidekick for the movie. I saw the movie with you dubbed, and then I saw the movie again subtitled. And the Shark Fiend, Beam, the dub voice actor, I like him a lot more than the Japanese voice actor. The dub voice actor really gives him a lot of manic energy. It really comes through a lot more than maybe even on the manga page, just how manic and crazy he could be.
I've only seen the English dub. I haven't seen the Japanese version yet, but the voice they gave Beam was perfect. That is exactly how I imagined Beam would sound. Matched his energy. It just kind of sets the tempo even for the whole movie, because this movie doesn't even start off slow. It starts off at like just a medium jog until by the end you're in a full-on sprint. Denji now has his new sidekick Beam. Makima decides to ask Denji out on a date, and the date is just a marathon of movies for the whole day. The interesting thing there I found was how similar their reactions were to the movies. They're watching one scene and everyone in the theater is crying except for Denji and Makima. They see another movie where everyone in the theater is just stone-faced, but in this one moment, Denji and Makima are brought to tears by the movie. And it starts making Denji wonder, not necessarily if there's something wrong, but it has him questioning the way he thinks. He starts wondering if the lack of reaction he has to some of this is a sign that he has no heart, and actually asks Makima about this. To which I have to say, bold move. I wouldn't have asked that of any first date. Makima, in a moment that stops Denji dead in his tracks, presses her ear against his chest and tells Denji, yeah, you have a heart. And it's clearly affected him more positively than I think it would have affected anyone else. For a lot of people, that would be considered an invasion of space, but Denji sees it as something affectionate, which he's misconstruing his own feelings. There is sort of a mirror, how he sees the movies and how he sees social interactions.
The only movie that he reacts to, it's the two characters embracing it, having some kind of connection, which to me, Denji is just a typical teenager. The reason he thinks he has no heart is because he's not open. When you're a young guy, you're way too closed off. I used to think that too when I was younger. I used to think, do I not feel like other people? Can I not cry? Why don't I cry at movies? And a lot of it is just because you're just not in touch with your emotions. At least I was. I was very closed off and trying to project like hardness.
And that's also even just a social peer pressure kind of thing. The idea that a man doesn't go and shed tears. He has to go and project strength at all times. And as I've gotten older, I've realized just how incorrect that is and how liberating would be the word when it comes to finding that movie that you emotionally connect with on some level.
There is a lot of juxtaposition in Chainsaw Man, where you have the two sides of Denji. You have the Chainsaw Man, who's the badass killer, and then you have Denji, who's the insecure kid, almost like a Peter Parker kind of type.
If Peter Parker wanted to feel boobs.
He probably did, he just didn't tell us that. He was more graceful about it.
With great power comes great responsibility and keeping your hands to yourself. He's like a schlubbier sort of Peter, in a way. The poor kid hasn't even been to school, but yet he's still able to go and function in society and even carry insight into how other people are. Sometimes that insight can be incorrect, but there's always a little grain of truth in there still that shows that he was on the right path.
And he's starting to find a family with the other devil hunters, with Aki, with Power. Just as he has this dichotomy between his two identities, there's also a dichotomy, I guess like every teenage boy, between the horny side and the thoughtful side. And that's when he meets Reze, the love interest of the film.
One of the more awkward meet-cutes I've seen. Before he meets her, he ends up putting in a donation for people that have suffered from devil attacks. And in return, he's given a flower, to which Denji immediately eats it.
I used to meet kids like this. Nobody would want to hang out with them. And then you'd feel bad nobody would hang out with them. So then you'd go over and talk to them. And then after talking to them, you'd realize why nobody wanted to hang out with them, because they're fucking weird. That's the thing with Denji. We want to have compassion for him and we want to be understanding for him, but he's the kind of guy who just randomly eats flowers. Like, what the fuck's up with this dude?
Denji's got his own quirks, we'll call them. Keeping with the theme that started even from the first chapter, where Makima would refer to Denji as her dog. This girl that joins Denji in the phone booth says that Denji's face reminds her of her dog. The big moment in the manga when she finally accepts the flower and looks at Denji and smiles. It's this beautiful drawing of this girl, but it's done very well in the movie, shot for shot out of the manga. The way she's drawn is incredibly charming.
That whole sequence is really cool, and I really liked the 3D where we could see the depth on characters' shoulders or the depth from their hair and their face behind their hair.
It sounds simple, but it reminds me of those old Viewmasters that I used to have when I was a kid. The depth it shows in the phone booth, the rain hitting on glass, the way Reze's hair goes and falls between her eyes. I get the feeling this was really meticulously thought out.
Aki, he has now been partnered with the Angel Devil, and they are now working together.
The Angel Devil devil is just a miserable person, but that also is because he sees himself as a devil first. He's incredibly lazy, and he doesn't want to help Aki with anything. It's such a complete difference for him compared to working with Power and Denji, where he's able to go and find ways to speak their language and they cooperate with him. With the Angel Devil, you don't get any of that. It's just this thing that leaves Aki more frustrated than anything, and there's even the fact that the Angel Devil mentions many times throughout the movie that, I bet you it'd be great to die. I really want to die. Meanwhile, Aki only has 2 years of his life left, thanks to the Cursed Devil.
Aki is kind of like the Batman of the group. He's the only human. He has to make the most sacrifices. He's a human being surrounded by devils, so he has to project this fearlessness. Just as Denji is almost trying to find his confidence, Aki is trying to let those walls down a little. He was able to let those walls down with Himeno, but then losing her has brought those walls back up. And now Denji and Aki are now in this situation where they have two new friends. It is kind of like a relationship movie. It is a movie that, despite all the craziness, it is about two people. I guess you would say mostly around Denji and Reze.
Reze, a lot of what she does with Denji, she's very flirty with him, and Denji's about as thick as I am when it comes to someone flirting. An hour later, after things have happened, he's like, wait a minute, was she? Nah, good. He finds himself now seeing her regularly at the cafe she works at, and Reze starts trying to not so much take him under her wing, but decides to try to teach him a little bit about the world and what goes on. She seems to be perfect for Denji in every way, which is why as you watch the movie, you just get that feeling in the back of your spine, travels up your neck that just tells you that something's wrong. Eventually, Reze goes and takes Denji to her school. She goes and takes Denji and teaches him to swim. Of course, to do so, they both had to go and strip down until they're both just in their birthday suits. And she asks, please let me teach you everything I know, that sort of thing. And it's very, very off-putting. It's very ethereal in some ways, but it's still like something waiting.
Denji is having a crisis of faith where he's in love with Makima, but then he's into Reze, and then he hates Power, but then she's still cute also. And so he's talking to Pochita in his head saying, what do I do? He's almost like Tenchi and Tenchi Moyo trying to choose between which hot chick to go with.
The funny thing is that this is all done in a lovely little montage showing all of the women that have shown up in Chainsaw Man, but they also start off with the Angel Devil because he's more effeminate looking. You have Power. He points out all of these negatives, but it's probably still the most positive relationship he has. Even though the fact that these two just keep stumbling over each other, it's not as clear in the manga. The movie is able to go and show it with a bit more clarity. When they bring Power to Makima, and she says that Power has to have a bloodletting to go and get rid of the extra blood or else she's going to become more dangerous. Makima asks Denji, can I borrow Power for a few days? Power is just curled up in a ball on the floor behind Makima's desk. Power is flipping out. It shows just how frightened Power is of Makima.
Reze is off. She is using the restroom. Also in this school is some dude who has a contract with the Typhoon Devil, and this dude is trying to get Chainsaw Man. Reze kills this dude by putting him in like a Taz mission.
Pretty much, yeah. When the killer gets close, she goes and breaks out her CQC until the guy's just lying there dead. At that point, you find out Reze knows more than 2 languages and starts singing in Russian.
That's a scene that comes straight out of the manga. Obviously, it works well, better in the movie, maybe, I guess, because you get to hear her singing it rather than just imagining it.
It was at least startling in the manga because I wasn't expecting that to happen. And that was when I started to learn about Fujimoto likes to go and put in his social commentary. After killing the dude, very cheerfully shows up in front of Denji, and they walk out of the school. Reze invites Denji to this festival, and there's a great place to go and see fireworks. And she brings Denji, but before the fireworks start, she goes and asks Denji to go and leave the division and run away with her. This is pretty much the big moment for Denji. He has to go and make a choice, and he chooses to stay with the division, at which point Reze goes and gives Denji his second kiss, and the poor guy just cannot get a break when it comes to getting a kiss from women.
Reze, she bites his tongue off, and I like that sequence in the movie a lot better than in the manga. In the manga, we just see her face, and I really like that scene in the movie. We see the tongue, and it pans up to her, and you hear that BAM from the music and everything.
You needed more blood in that scene in the manga, as far as I'm concerned, and the movie delivers on the blood. Reze's mouth is just covered in it, whereas like in the manga, it seemed like there was just a bit of it there. It looked like she bit his whole tongue off in the movie. She then cuts off his hand that was about to go and start up his chainsaw, and she works for the gun devil, she's the bomb devil. When I read this in the manga, I was kind of like, whoa. Reze has been wearing a choker around her neck the whole movie, and it's got a little pin, like a little ring, and she reaches for this ring and pulls it out, and it looks like a grenade pin. She says, boom. Her head explodes. And then she starts to kind of reconstitute herself out of all these wires and fuses.
That's another sequence that I like better in the film. Bomb Girl's henshin sequence. It's like 2 or 3 panels, I think, in the manga. And that was like a whole music video, like psychedelic sequence. It was really cool.
We really cannot speak well enough of the animation. Tatsuki Fujimoto must be a fan of Hellraiser. There's such a Hellraiser quality to the devils that he cooks up in his stories. The man definitely has an affinity for that kind of 80s horror aesthetic. He goes whole hog, all in there. Reze's arms are actually made up of fuses. She's got like this apron that's just covered in dynamite sticks. She looks dangerous just on that first sight.
Yeah, she blows everybody up, and Denji and Beam, they go to the training facility, and Beam basically lets Aki know what's going on. And this is the second half of the movie. The first half was a lot of narrative, and now the second half is basically just like a giant Dragon Ball action sequence. I was thinking if this movie came out in the 90s, they would probably have released it in 2 parts. The first part would have been all the romance, and then the second part would have just been the giant action scene.
I thought when I first read this arc that maybe the first like 10, 25% of the movie was going to be all the setup, and the rest of it was going to be all the action. I'm really thankful I was wrong. Using the first half really to go and just set everything up just makes everything pay off so much better. Absolutely thrilling. We even get a little bit of character development before things really kick off. Beam is taking Denji to the Devil Hunters training facility, where we get to see Aki put in a little training, a little sparring match with one of the younger agents. And it's probably the most relaxed I've ever seen Aki. He seems the most comfortable and the most at home in this setting.
And he's bonding a little bit more with the Angel Devil. It is very much the quiet before the storm.
And in true 80s horror movie fashion, she just starts walking up and just like normal, looking like Reze, but then just starts giving this big smile as she's asking for help and that she's in trouble. She is able to remove her head, throw it through a window, and use that as a bomb that blows up a good chunk of the building.
When Reze first gets there, that reminded me of like the Evil Dead, when Ash's girlfriend is dancing around with no head. and that whole sequence where she's trashing the training facility, that reminded me of the first Terminator, where Arnold's blowing away all the cops. Reze, she throws her head, and when her head explodes, she grows a new body. And then her old body grabs onto that guy and explodes. Reze, she's naked, and she has no underwear till she kills those 2 guys. Then she has an underwear. And this is also in the manga. I'm assuming those guys had an underwear that fit her, I guess. One of those guys had underwear that fit a woman.
I didn't notice that. I'm sure Devil Hunters Division doesn't judge. Whatever the case, she covered up.
We get that whole sequence on the cars, which is really cool. There's a lot of sequences where it's different angles than the manga, and I like the angles that they use in that sequence where Denji breaks out, and then he decides he's gonna fight Bomb Girl, and we have that whole build-up with the music playing. And then we have this recurring theme where Denji is trying to give his heart to somebody as a person, but people just want to take the heart of Chainsaw Man.
As Denji pops out of the roof of the car, the music that starts playing is Maximum the Hormone from the one end credit sequence. I can't remember which episode. He almost talks like an old movie cowboy, too. He actually goes and tells Reze, I'm bringing you in. I've never had an adrenaline rush like this reading a comic, but that adrenaline rush got amplified so much in the movie.
That whole sequence is great, and I love the fact that Reze has all these different colored explosions that are happening. It makes everything look so cool.
It even works for a callback to the fireworks. I couldn't imagine it being animated in any different way. Studio Mappa just absolutely nailed it. I think by adding the extra blood there for Reze after biting off Denji's tongue, that was something that I felt the manga definitely needed more of, just to go and add that little horror movie aspect to it. They have these moments where it'll go and slow down and you see her using her bomb bursts on like her arms to just give her punches more impact and hit even faster. She uses it on Beam at one point where she just starts pummeling him with these explosive punches. Very similar to Bakugo on My Hero Academia, but this is executed in a different way. There's more lateral thinking almost, like she's clearly used these powers before, is very well trained in them. It even expands a little bit on it from the manga where she's like using all the wires and fuses that make up her arms and turning them into like missiles. She and Denji just have an absolute rip-roaring fight through most of the city. The only thing is that Denji still gets stomped in the opening round. One of the most disturbing things I saw in both the comic and this, after she grabs Denji by the neck, he's already lost his arms and legs and just starts blowing him up more and more and more until the chainsaw on the front of his head is gone. And all he is just this smoldering husk of a torso.
I think this fight scene will be hard to top because it really is the next level when you compare it to the fight scene with Katana Man. Even the use of sound, when she uses her kick and you get that poof, poof, those like military sounds, they're very powerful. You know, it definitely helps give the sound that visceral quality and helping you react to it and making the fight feel really intense. Also too, with a lot of the explosions being so colorful and almost like they're splashing, it keeps you immersed in the whole fight sequence.
You feel so immersed in it, you're afraid you're gonna go deaf hearing all of these explosions going off. Studio Mappa knocked it out of the damn park with this. Everyone in that theater was just like wide-eyed and amazed at how well it was all executed.
The director, Tatsuya Yoshihara, also worked on the TV series. I believe he directed the Katana Man episode. There's definitely a consistency with this fight to the Katana Man one, but it's like Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat 2, or even Terminator and Terminator 2. It's taken this original idea and just amplified it to like 100.
It's clear this dude has a passion for what Fujimoto has created and wants to see it executed as well as possible. The way everything moves, everything feels alive. Even the Bomb Devil, looking as bizarre as she does, looks real. They give that sense of physical weight to it.
The cool thing about Fujimoto's designs are they're unique and they're also very simple. They're not overly designed. If you were to have like a Michael Bay design a Chainsaw Man, he would be like covered in chainsaws and you couldn't tell what the fuck he was. When you keep those designs simple, I think the animation works better and it's easier for the audience to understand what's going on.
This is one of those things that I think is best executed in an anime. There's no other way around it. This is why animation is so important, especially hand-drawn animation. There's such impact with what you can go and do just with those drawings. It just grabs you and doesn't let go. In that first part of the fight there between Denji and the Bomb Devil, you pretty much are Denji by the time that whole sequence is done. You feel completely wasted as well.